Callie grabbed a carved wooden bear off of Sam's desk and threw it at him. "You jerk! I can't believe you're doing this!" He deflected the bear to the ground with his hand. He stared at her unblinking. "Callie, I'm sorry. Anything not directly funding the military I have to cut. You were the one who started this program. You were dead set on having me put together a team to go explore these worlds. What the hell, Sam?" She flailed her hands in the air. "I've got a crew together. I've got a mission plan, ship hired, outpost lander built. How could you cut us off like this?" She strode over to his desk and hid it, looking him in the eyes. "What? What could it have funded? Our pay wasn't that much. What, you going to get a shuttle, a couple new suits for the scribblers?" He sighed, shaking his head and closing his eyes. "No, you're right. I did want this bad, but now isn't the time." He opened his eyes and looked into hers. "I'm sorry, Callie. We ran the numbers. Everything non-essential to the war effort is getting trimmed or cut. We have to protect what we've built out here." She shook her head and stormed out. "Fucking space program all over again. You're losing out on research," she yelled as she pulled the door shut. Callie sat in the mess of the grease ship habitus. Around her were Cadence, Josiah, Grape Juice, and Rockborn. And that's it. He cut funding just like that. Called me in, broke the news, and bam, no mission. Josiah put his arms around her and touched his forehead to her hair. "It's going to be okay. Sounds like there is plenty of other work to do. We can maybe pull together and get funding for mercenary work. Can re-outfit the ship if the Gree is okay with it." Callie hit her fist on the table, shaking her glass. "No." She turned around and looked at them. "We've got others. I made deals with people to fully man this ship. It's not just us getting let down." She shook her head. "No. This is important. We have Scribbler Knights ready to get their names on the walls via this mission. Their short little lives. This would be a missed opportunity of a lifetime, literally, for them. I made calls to the Infinigan consulate. I was going to pick up a squad of their new shockers. I had all sorts of applications. It was going to be epic." Her shoulders slumped, and she leaned into Josiah. Cadence sat on the bench beside her and took her hand. "All he did was take money from us. That is all that is missing from the mission." She looked around at everyone. "All we need is some money, right?" The humans started nodding. Grape Juice bobbed slowly in time with them, agreeing. Callie and Josiah sat in the lobby of the Bank of Clowder, outside the hallways of offices. A Stygian approached with 2 modified breather suits. "I've just finished running these through the test bench. Put them on. Galafic is waiting." Callie and Josiah wormed themselves into the suits and turned on the breathing devices. They looked over the seams and joints themselves, making sure there were no leaks or non-working parts. The two looked into each other's faces and nodded. They walked toward the airlock side by side. On the other side of the airlock, the acidic air moved around them like a breezy soup, red with wisps of green. The Stygian secretary led them through to a back office. It motioned with several of its spindly hands for them to enter. "Galafic's office. Good luck." Callie nodded and led the way in. The office had a high ceiling, but it felt a lot lower as there were hundreds of metal bars crossing the space at various angles. The thick air gave shadows depth, and she grew disoriented looking around. "Hello?" Callie asked into her comms. A shadow darted through the mist, and then spread out like an arachnid's web. Callie focused on it. "Galafic?" The lights changed, and the Webbian was revealed in her full display. She was spread across 7 bars, and her numerous pinprick eyes stared down at the 2 humans. "Hello, Callie, Josiah. Time is of the essence here. Make your pitch." Callie nodded and patted Josiah. Yes, you're right. Okay. Vitalia. You know Vitalia, right?" Galafic flexed her web-like body. "Yes, that is the fundamental of your pitch. I'm aware of the profits being made from that world. Factories are already being built into its mantle. Quite the future powerhouse. Exactly. We are predicting this world will be quite similar, except more stable as there isn't an operational genforge on the surface. Callie started. We are expecting similar growth in all industry as we explore and settle this new world. Gallifik interrupted. This new world, in the heart of enemy territory, potentially inhabited by Gallic, and with a genforge in an unknown state. Am I wrong on any of that? Callie looked at Josiah, and then back up at the Webbian. No, that sounds spot on. Callie fidgeted a bit. I know it sounds like a long shot, but that is science. What we can learn from this expedition outweighs near everything else. There is no telling what amazing things we can find out. Gallifik darted across the room using the bars and restretched herself in a corner. That is exactly the risk. There is no telling what will be found out. The risk far exceeds reward on this deal. I'm sorry, but I cannot facilitate sending this up the loan ladder. You have a good record, and that is in your favor. But the world is what we would be investing in, not you. And that world is at the heart of bad records in the Rim. Callie nodded, her hands clasped in front of her. Well, thank you for your time. You are welcome, humans. Please leave now, the Webbian said as it moved back across the room. Callie sat with everyone again, this time in the bridge with the Gree of the Habitus. That's it. Loan turned down. Mission is too high a risk. Grape Juice knelt on a bench. Research has always been at the fringes of funding in nearly all known sapient races. Preservation takes the forefront. This is to be expected and allowed for. The survival of the Clouder takes priority station. Maybe we should pivot as Josiah mentioned. We could be an asset to the war effort. Rockborn stepped away from the wall, speaking through his encased computing device. I may know someone. Everyone turned and looked at him. The ship's Gree, blinking slowly, spoke up. I know many as well. What is your point? Rockborn continued. I know someone who might be able to finance the expedition. It is risky, but I could ask if everyone still wishes to continue. Callie looked at Grape Juice. Were you wanting to abscond? Grape Juice stood straighter, taller. No. I was merely attempting to raise morale. A world of potential unknown life forms for myself to catalog is a treasure I cannot turn away from if there is a hope of attaining it. Callie looked over at Rockborn. What kind of risk you talking about? Rockborn turned his multifaceted eyes toward his sister. She can be chaotic at times. She may fund us, she may not, and there is no telling what she may ask of us in return if she does. Callie looked around at everyone. The Gree of the Habitus spoke through the branches extending through the room. I wish to know the history of my race. I wish to know they wise. Let us at least try once more if there is still hope. Rockborn lowered his head. All right, I will go make the pitch. Rockborn walked through the hospital, following the grazer nurse. He stepped into a patient room and sat down on the stool in the center of the room. The grazer took some notes, looking over his scale-covered body. All right, I think I have noted all I can detail. I will send in your requested provider momentarily. Rockborn replied through the comms. Thank you. I appreciate the candor. You are welcome. The grazer finished a sentence on the data slate and then stepped out of the room. Rockborn waited motionless for 20 minutes before the door opened. A pink female human hologram entered the room. Hello? Rockborn, is it? He nodded. She approached him. The nature of your visit was not spelled out. It said you were requesting to speak to me concerning a private matter. Is that correct? He nodded and extended his hand. She reached up and grabbed it with her ghostly holographic hand. Inside the hologram, a segmented robotic arm reached through and touched his hand lightly. She smiled as a scraping began decoding who and what he is. Interesting. He lowered his hand and stared at her. You are a chimera, but you're base. Interesting indeed. You are one of mine, Cammy said. He began typing in Latin inside his chest cavity. Hello, Mother. Hello, Francis. You have changed substantially since you stopped by last. I like it. You're quite formidable. She walked around him. Self-contained biological reactor inside of you. Impressive. If you were angry enough, you could seppuku this station in half. I'm enjoying the Clouder and intend no such thing. She looked up into his faceted eyes. Oh, of course not. I'm enjoying them as well. They're helping make lots of new storylines for the charges. You, as you are now, will make several of your own. She ran her holographic and robotic hand over him. Impressive. She looked back up into his eyes. Were you just wanting to show off your new body? Or did you actually have something to discuss with me? I am part of a team. We are looking for a patron. We are getting desperate to find funding. Cammy took a step away from him. Ah, the proverbial returning to mommy to ask for a loan. She pulled up a chair and pretended to sit in it, crossing her glowing pink legs. Go on. Tell me about your friends. He shifted and focused on her. They are passionate about science and history. I am sending you the project plan. He pulled up the file and flicked it over to her. We're going to explore a planet, take samples, research plants and animals, and maybe find answers concerning the origin of a couple of the sapient species here in the hole. She chuckled to herself. I like it. It seems biology is up your alley. Oh, the Gree and the Gallic. They are a curious symbiosis. Slavery built into their very DNA, quite brutal. I can barely imagine what their world is like. It says it's mostly covered in water and tropical. That sounds nice too. He nodded. So, what do you hope to get out of this? She asked deadpan. He sat motionless for a moment. I hope to gain land and mineral rights, coupled with access to any biological data discovered. She nodded. That could be quite a financial boon. I will ask for a percentage of that as well. I will route a portion of my assets to you to use as you see fit. Thank you, Mother. She stood up, gliding above the floor toward him. You will take 15 charges with you. You will train them. Teach them sciences, combat, survival training. Keep them alive, but do not make them feel weak. Do you understand? Of course, Mother. I will discuss it with the others, but I am sure that they will find this a good deal. She smiled. I know. There are other deals that must be made as well. I'm sending detailed amendments to the mission plan to your superior, Miss California Smith. You have my blessing, Rockborn. Have fun playing. She patted his leg and then turned, leaving the room. Callie let the Gree of the Habitus pilot the craft through the rift toward their next stop, Kawaru 8. She sat in her cabin and looked over the manifest. So far she had Cadence and Rockborn, Grape Juice, Josiah up at the helm with the Gree Tree, 25 of Kami's tourists out playing Space Cowboy, and in Finnegan on a prison release program, 5 Grazers, a cohort of Scribblers, Stubborn, Slayer, and 3 balls of SFP. She highlighted the Finnegan, pulling up his rap sheet. Fu Fong, his crimes included accidental manslaughter, genetic tampering without proper licensing, and resisting arrest. Wow, stupid Cammy! Callie pulled up the list of charges, going over them. They were old, far older than anyone she knew. Some were in the 200s. They had skills, but they were marked as untested in real environs. That will be fun to work out. She flicked the data slate onto her bed. It was worth the deal. She got up and flung herself beside the slate on the bed. She held it above her head as she scooted onto the pillow. She thumbed down into the gear Cammy had gave them. Mobile cannon placements, mining equipment, 3 shuttles, an enhanced biosuite and mechanic shop, and a deployable orbital station. Worth it. She smiled and dropped the slate beside her head, staring up at the vine-covered ceiling. Habitas, you listening to me? The ceiling hissed a moment and she could make out faint whispers. Always. You are my crew. She smiled. That's creepy as fuck. The vines hissed again. It is necessary. Go to sleep. We will be at the internment world in a few hours. You should rest some. All right. Did you ever get a hold of Dam? I reached Veritas. It has made the human aware of our coming. Callie stripped off her pants and crawled under the covers. Good. Wake me when we get in system. I will try. Sleep well, Cammy. The Gree whispered. A few minutes after her wake-up call, Callie was in the bridge room with the rest of the main crew. Status? Josiah stood next to an outgrowth near the side of the room. We have been cleared for approach. Detaching the freight cars now. We will be descending down to the landing pad shortly. Callie looked at Cadence leaning in the corner. You and your brother. With me. Your mom got you to someone else to babysit. Callie started toward the door and motioned them to follow. The three made it down to the disembarkment room. The two women suited up in their armored void suits. Rockborn stood staring at the door. One of his faceted eyes focusing on the oval display in the corner showing their descent. The ship touched down, and the three entered into the airlock. The air hissed out, and lights changed on the door. Rockborn touched the pad, and the outer door silently opened out to the rock-ice exoplanet. He stepped out, and the two women followed. The walk across the smooth pad was buoyant, quiet, and didn't take long. They were at the receiving lock in moments. The door hissed open, expecting them. They entered, and it shut. A whoosh of air flowed over them as the lock pressurized rapidly. The inner door clicked ready within moments, and the trio entered the offices of the camp. Callie led the troop down the hall, her HUD displaying a map provided from Veritas. She passed several Infinigan Fragger troops before reaching the designated door. The door continued the trend and opened on its own. The three entered. The white room was illuminated and bare except for a blue box sitting on a white stand. Callie looked around the room. A golden holographic man stepped up beside her. Hello, Callie. Welcome to Camp Topaz. She looked the AI over. Thank you. You must be Veritas. She looked around the room again and settled back on the blue box. Is this what we agreed upon? Veritas nodded. Yes. Damn had that crafted specifically for your mission. I'm sorry we couldn't send any heavy firepower. We are truly wishing for your success. Having another gem in the Clouder would aid everyone greatly. She approached the box and picked it up. Thank you for this. If it's anything like Curator, it's an asset. It is merely a copy of Base Self, and I myself am modeled after our president and clone. He smiled and flexed his holographic muscular arms. At least my mentality. Callie stared at him for a moment. Anyways, we have some crew to pick up. Crackletooth said he would come, and Cammy negotiated some of Spitzlittle's troops. Where are they at? Veritas touched her helmet, updating her map. She could see dots moving towards the habitus. She nodded. Ah, they are already boarding. Good. And the others? Veritas pointed at the door. You will have to pick them up yourself. The halls will be clear for you to depart. Callie nodded. All right. Yay. More political prisoners. She held onto the box and exited into the hall. Orange lights strobed along the hall, leading them on. Rockborn stoically held the rear, and Cadence was on edge. Callie reached another door, and it opened up. The trio held back as several crawfishians stepped out. The slime-covered crustacean-like creatures maneuvered down the hall and stopped. Two crawfishians in the dark room barked orders in their undulating tongue. Move it, dinner balls. 5 parasitic clusters of bodies stepped out from the room in front of Callie. Callie held out her hand. A crawfishian went to strike her hand down, but Rockborn caught it. The Gallic looked at the crawfishian, and then at the armor-suited human. It reached out one of its host's claws and gently took her proffered appendage. Callie smiled and shook it. Welcome to the team. Did you read the mission brief? The parasite looked over at the crawfishian beside it with 4 diverse heads. No, it said towards Callie. We were told the basics, but we have not been allowed any digital access. Callie let go of its claw. Well, no worries. We will get you caught up on board. I was told there will be custom-made void suits for you shortly. Do I have to worry about you all on this mission? The creature shook its heads in human fashion. No. Parry has given us adequate training. It will be rough, but we can restrain ourselves. The crawfishian giving orders approached Callie. These are the most behaved. They have been designated low risk. You will have 7 of my men go with you anyway. You will probably need them. Callie looked him in his recessed eyes. The more the merrier. It bowed its multi-mandibled head. Your last ward will meet us at the airlock. Callie nodded and turned to follow the now blue lights leading them through the complex back to the airlock. She held onto her treasure box. The group marched through and approached the airlock. A human female was standing next to it, suited up and ready with a pack. She extended her arm. Hello, Miss Smith. Pleasure to meet you. Callie is fine. Nice to meet you as well, Enid. I heard you have mechanic experience. Some. Mostly security details on board Oblivion carriers. I know my way around attacker if needed, though. Callie laughed. You man any guns on those ships? Enid shook her head. No, but several of my good friends did. They'd let me hang out in the capacitor bays with them in between ports. We had good times down there. Callie nodded and looked around at everyone. How you feel about my crew? You going to be a problem? Enid looked at the Gallic, then the Crawfishian, and finally on Rockborn. It will take some getting used to, but I see no problems. Rockborn stepped closer to her. She stared him down without falter. He typed a message to Callie. She's tough. I want her on my team. Callie smiled and pointed at the tall metallic-scaled humanoid. Enid, you're with him. She spun her finger in the air. All right. Everyone let's pack up and get this show on the road. Next stop, Gree Prime. The head Gallic behind her spoke up as it was donning its suit. Gallic Prime. She stared at him. Correcting me already? He looked up with three of his corpse's heads. I have misspoke. I apologize, he said with three different mouths. She turned toward the door. You're here as an experiment. Your actions decide quite a few futures. I keep your comments to yourself and focus on being part of the team. The Gallic finished suiting his bodies up. Yes, ma'am. She nodded and motioned the first of the crew to enter the lock. Callie was in her cabin as the Habitus was lifting off. She smiled into the hologram on her data slate. Thank you for the troops. Spitzlittle floated in front of her. You're welcome. They are family. Bring them home to me. She nodded. Of course. I'll have your husband focus on getting up that beacon first thing. I'll try and keep constant contact thereafter. Spitzlittle looked over something in her hand. I like the planning. I worry you may run into parts of the Armada, though. Besides that, the mission seems sound. Spitzlittle typed off to the side. She nodded. All right. Got the Armada problem resolved. Another hologram appeared, a small representation of an Omega Dew. Spitzlittle bobbed her ears. Grendel, are you okay going with them? The mech nodded its human-like machine head. Of course. I was talking to Cammy about it. She has pinned high hopes on this adventure. I agree, it would be wise for me to assist. I can patrol the system while they investigate planetside. Spitzlittle leaned back in her chair. Good. This is good. Yes. You have soldiers, scientists, and all the tech you could need. Be sure to get the beacon up first thing. I want constant updates. Callie mirrored her and leaned back in her chair. You will have them. I hope we find something good on this world. We have a lot of hopes pinned to us. Spitzlittle tilted her head. You got your scans in right? Callie nodded with a sigh. Yeah, hated that. I don't like the thought of being cloned. Spitzlittle stared at her for a moment. Being my entire race is clone or clone-descended, I think there is some benefit to it. It was wise of you to participate in the procedure. Yeah, I don't know. Being backed up in a preserver zoo kind of freaks me out. It is a horrifying thought. Spitzlittle conceded. Yet, it saved us. It saved you from the very creatures who destroyed you. What if they altered you? Or your memories? You ever wonder? Spitzlittle rolled her head as she spun a bit in her chair. Sometimes, but I like who I am. I have several good children. They are made by me. She sat up straight. Maybe that is what you need, Callie. You need to be like Sam's wives. Get yourself fat with spawn. That is how my people are overcoming our calamity. Maybe yours can as well. Callie laughed. He has wives now. The Infinigan matriarch bobbed her ears. Yes, the Infinigan fostered, and the one who came on your ship, the Olivia. They are giving him children. Didn't know Olivia was pregnant. That's a good thing. Wait. Of course he wants to bolster defense spending. He's in daddy mode or something, I bet. Callie looked at the Infinigan hologram. The other one, she's married to his clone. Spitzlittle raised her hand, clicking it. Ah, yes. The clone married a clone, and now they have a little non-clone baby named after the original. Yes. You dislike having a backup, right? Callie nodded slowly. Yep. Try all you want, you're just making it weirder for me. She laughed. Maybe my clones will do crazy shit. Might be neat. I can order up some to be made to greet you when you come back. It will be funny. I think I'll do that. Callie shook her head. Please don't. Only in case I die. Also, don't let it know it's a clone. Your backup isn't in my zoo. You're at the Preserver's whims now. Callie looked at Grendel's rendering. You ready to fly? Grendel nodded. Of course. Ready to rift when you are. Callie looked up at the vine-covered ceiling. Habitas, whenever you're ready. Let's get going. The ceiling hissed a whisper back at her. Freight car check complete. All is secure. Nearing departure coordinates within the hour. I will keep you advised. Thank you. Callie looked at Spitzlittle. Wish us luck. Thank you again for the troops and gear. Spitzlittle waved. Take care of them and keep my mate from doing anything stupid. I'll try.